Okay, good morning, everybody. I think we can start now. I want to first and foremost apologize to everybody for the mix-up this morning. Like I was saying earlier, it feels like Microsoft Teams has been a bit tipsy this morning. Normally, would usually use Zoom for our webinars, and so we thought just trying Teams for the first time today. So I guess we have to do a bit more preparatory work to get this sorted, so we don't have this kind of scenario again. But thanks again, everybody, for making out time from a very busy schedule to join us in this interesting webinar. We hope it's going to be worth your while. And it's actually the policy month on the Participate project, and I create. And this month, we're focusing a lot around the importance of policy landscapes with respect to development in Africa. And today we've got four very, very powerful speakers who will take us through a series of talks. And then there'll also be some level discussion. We're also going to be asking individuals a series of questions I would like to respond to, and we hope that you can engage with us. Now, so just a kind of an introduction. Today we're talking about policy and institutional landscape for development of eco-innovation in Africa. And as we all know, the world is facing growing concerns about the state of the natural environment. Except you're speaking. Thank you very much. So now, as we all know, the world is facing some really powerful growing concerns about the state of the environment and due to negative impacts on greenhouse emissions, and also the impacts on the inefficiency, natural resource use, and waste management. And it's brought about a lot of devastation in our environment. And most of these challenges are culminated in energy, water, health, food insecurity concerns. And Africa is getting a dose of this major impact. Now, these challenges, I think, because of the global dimensions of these challenges, it has triggered very, very interesting global and local policy adjustments that has been designed to try to mitigate these challenges. An example of those are the Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations. From an African perspective, there is the African Union Agenda 2063, which is tagged the Africa we want, with a mission to accelerate Africa's transition to an innovation-led, knowledge-based economy on the back of science, technology, and innovation. And several years ago, the African Union actually urged its member states, I think about 55 countries in Africa, that every member state, every national government should try improve their STI readiness in terms of infrastructure, their competence, their capacity, their basis of impact and societal change. And this can only be driven from a point of policy. But ultimately, the question is, even though there has been engagement from the African Union point of view to help, the question is, how impactful has these policies been? In most African countries, like we know, there is high increase in production and consumption of goods and services. And that's obviously because of the increased population. And this is going to continue. So it means, therefore, that African governments begin to think a bit more sustainably with respect to what their activities are. The potential for dangerous impact is very imminent. And so a popular term or a range of terms normally in use is terms like green economy, green growth, bioeconomy, circular economy, and a range of other terms. And they are all an attempt to improve processes towards sustainable development. Now, an interesting term we'll be hearing a lot about today is the term eco-innovation. And I won't speak about it because there's a speaker who will deal with this. But eco-innovation is basically around empowering African institutions through policy, for example, to kind of think about developing new resources, new products, new services that have got very little impact on the environment. Now, within that premise, the question is, what can the individual do? What can governments do in terms of developing policies to help improve the sustainable agenda on the continent? Now, this webinar ultimately is been put together in partnership with different African countries who are partners on the RECIRCULATE and Actuate projects, which have been awarded by the UK government Global Challenges Research Fund. And on the back of the project is kind of targeted at improving a circular water economy in Africa. And so today we're going to focus a bit more on policy, and we have 4 interesting speakers who will speak at the topic from different perspectives. So without much further ado, I have the absolute pleasure to invite the first speaker to give us a sense of the term I was speaking about, the term eco-innovation. Now, Dr. Nicholas Ozor holds a double PhD. Well, people struggle to have 1 PhD. This guy has got 2 in agricultural extension from University of Nigeria and in international and rural development from University of Reading in the UK. He is currently the executive director of the African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS, in Kenya, Nairobi. And he's a Commonwealth Scholar, a Wellcome Trust awardee, and he sits on the board of many international bodies, including a member of the governing board of the International Research and Training Center under the auspices of UNESCO. He is a multi-award winner and an ardent researcher. Nicholas will speak about eco-innovation policy and institutional landscape, opportunities, and challenges in African scope. Nicholas, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akan, for that very elaborate introduction. I was thinking you were introducing a different person. They didn't know it was me.
I'm sure it's
so. Thank you. I know we have lost a lot of time, so I would go straight into my presentations. Otherwise, I would have started using some proverbs and adages that my grandparents have taught me on how tortoise have, in the olden days, survived the famines and so on and so forth. But let's leave it for another day. Like he said, this topic is around policy and institutional landscape of eco-innovation in selected African countries. And I work as the executive director of ATPS. Next slide. So the outline of my presentation will be just to introduce ATPS and the objectives of this presentation and the methods we used and the key findings, and go straight to what works, what doesn't work, and why, and then conclude with some recommendations. Next slide. So ATPS is a transdisciplinary network of researchers, policymakers, civil society actors, and the private sector actors that promote the generation, dissemination, use, and mastery of science, technology, and innovation for Africa's development, for environmental sustainability, and for global inclusion. We work through national chapters located in 30 countries, and our headquarters is located here in Nairobi, Kenya. So ATPS overall aims to function in knowledge generation, brokerage, dissemination, and valorization, which is very important for the topic we are talking about today on eco-innovation. Next slide. Just to set the stage, you will recall, sorry, my slide has gone up, okay. So to set the stage, you will recall that last week there was a teaser around policy that Dr. Akan threw into the platform. And I was very glad reading so many posts around policy and why it is working and why it is not working in Africa. And that it was that discussion that made me to bring out this slide because I needed to explain to us the difference between policy and public policy. As there were some misunderstanding or kind of lack of understanding around these two concepts. So when we talk about policy, policy can basically mean a plan of action. It can also be an inaction taken by an entity designed towards arriving at a goal. So that entity can be yourself in your family. You say this is your policy. It can be a group of people. It can be an organization who decides to set out policies that are guiding them. It can be any other entity. But when we talk about public policy, we are referring specifically to the state, that is government. This is the formal decision-making tool for government. So we need to be careful with that to understand the difference. So public policy refers to those instruments that the state uses to govern their people, to make informed decisions, and so on and so forth. Next slide. So if we bring it in now in this concept of eco-innovation, which Akan has tried very well to introduce eco-innovation to us. But there is the simple thing I want you to bear in mind when you hear about eco-innovation is there are two basic concepts. One is the issue of creativity, because innovation is involved. Creativity with hope of generating goods and services that will help humankind solve their problems or challenges. The other angle or the other strand is sustainability. So while you are creating to solve your problem, you have to create those goods and services in such a way that it will serve you as well as serve the future generations. That's the sustainability angle. And sustainability, as we know, can be economic, it can be social, it can be. So one of the highly referenced definition of eco-innovation, considering that it is somewhat a new concept, is the one by Reid and Mezinski, which stated that eco-innovation is the creation of novel and competitively priced goods, processes, systems, services, and procedures designed to satisfy human needs and provide a better quality of life for everyone with a whole life cycle minimal use of natural resources per unit output and a minimal release of toxic substances. So when Akan was talking about this eco-innovation, it talks about how we now, I mean, mostly in Africa, just utilize a thing and then dump the waste without thinking how that waste can be recycled and reused to produce goods and services. Next, please. So overall, we look at the concept of eco-innovation as a form of development that takes into account environment friendliness and ensures best quality of life. We look at it as innovation that ensures sustainable use of environmental resources. We look at it as processes or efforts towards creation of goods, services, systems that will serve mankind, all embodied around eco-innovation. Next slide. So most often, and to bring this concept home, because it is a newer concept, especially in this part of the world, people have used similar concepts to describe what eco-innovation meant. There is background noise, please. Concepts like green growth, green innovation, green energy, green technologies, smart agriculture, ecological innovation, and so on and so forth, the concept of greening, which is sustainability, have been used in the previous, as the previous concepts to describe the familiarity with the concept we are now trying to introduce and adopt in our innovation system across Africa. Next slide. So I wouldn't go into rationale again because rationale has been provided. It is because of these quests to get to transform into innovation-led, knowledge-based economy, which the AU, the Africa we want, has given to Africans the mandate to do, that eco-innovation is born to be in the forefront of sustainability, to reduce the dependency on resources, and to use innovation to for transformational change on the continent. Next slide, please. Then the objective is clear. We try to now see what is there on ground in some African countries who are what we call RECIRCULATE countries: Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Zambia, to understand how they view eco-innovation and the policies that are related to eco-innovation. We try to review and find institutions that have also been promoting or implementing activities, programs, and policies, strategies related to eco-innovation. Next slide, please. So the methodology we used primarily was data collection. We got key desk studies, key informant interviews, FGD, to triangulate the data we received from desk and key informant interviews. Next slide. On the key findings. One, I would like to report that whereas eco-innovation is generally a fairly new concept, stakeholders in the study area happen to be aware and knowledgeable about it. So that shows that efforts towards mainstreaming the concept of eco-innovation into the policies and programs of government will not be resisted, or will not be like a brand new thing that government will shock them first before they begin to analyze it. So they are aware across board, because we try to reach out to the quadruple helix, the government people, the ministries, departments and agencies, the researchers. On the other hand, we reach the private sector actors, we reach the civil society and other CBOs to understand whether they know what we are talking about. And there is general agreement that eco-innovation is a concept that they have idea about. In terms of policies, we found out that there are no standalone eco-innovation policies in the study area. However, there are related policies that address similar concerns. Next slide. So when I say related policies, we mean we tried to review existing policies to find how they have embraced the key principles and practices that eco-innovation, and we're able to find these key principles and practices around eco-innovation in some of existing policies, like in the Africa Bioenergy Policy Framework guidelines, We found such in the STISA, the Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa. We found some in CADEP, where they promote issues on smart agriculture. Next slide, please. At the regional levels, we found most of them also, like the Eastern Africa Regional Bioeconomy Strategy, a strategy that even myself have been, our organization have been involved in developing, the STI policy for the region, the ECOWAP strategic policy framework, the ECOWAS policy and the ECOPOST, the SADC policy paper on climate change. All these have aspects, statements in favor of eco-innovation. Next slide. But at the national level, we found out that there are multiple policies, multiple institutions that promote eco-innovation across the 6 countries that we studied. And if you go to the energy sector in most of the institutions, in most of the countries, there are lots of institutions. When we say institution here, we mean organization that are housing policies and implementing these policies across within the energy sector, that have also recognized the use of renewable energy for transformational change. In environment and forestry policies and institutions, in agriculture policies and institutions, transport, trade and industry, STI policies, and as well as health policies. So we found many policies in these countries, but these are detailed in the reports, some of the specific policies, but they mainly fall under these 7 key sectoral areas of development. Next slide, please. So now, the most important thing, what are the factors that enable this eco-innovation, the domiciliation of eco-innovation in countries? We found out that these are like the precursors to what we called what works, what doesn't work, and why. Because in countries where there are effective policies and enabling environment, then we find out that eco-innovation policies are always implemented, or eco-innovation related policies, because like I said, there is no standalone eco-innovation policy. So in countries where there are institutions and actors that are available, for instance, in some countries we don't have Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. And you find out that in many countries where you have STI ministry, they function to coordinate other ministries under a national innovation system. And that has helped the concept of mainstreaming eco-innovation principles and practices in those countries. Where there are political goodwill, it is always better to have, there's high propensity for eco-innovation to thrive. Same with media and communications, effective linkages and inclusive participation of all stakeholders. That's with reference to PPP, enforcement of policies and regulations, because one thing is to have the policy, the other is to implement it. And I saw a lot of these issues being raised during the policy discussions, where people are saying, why not just disband this policy? Why do we still use policy when people are not implementing it? We will come there, because that's a very interesting discussion on whether we should disband policies or not. Same on the other flip side, poverty, exclusion, lack of capacity, poor infrastructure, lack of coordination among institutions, weak policy implementation, weak institutional frameworks are all constrainers to the domiciliation of eco-innovation in the countries that we have studied. Next slide, please. We will go specific to some of the what works. Next slide. Some of the things that we found as key to what has enabled eco-innovation. Like I said, you have jumped. There's one before. Good. So we have presence of a national STI policy. So where in countries where you have STI policies or STI Act, you find that it will provide frameworks for implementation of eco-innovation related policies. And I give an example with Kenya. Kenya has an STI Act of 2013. And that act has led to the establishment of 3 key agencies that have pursued aspects of eco-innovation. One, the one they call NACOSTI, National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation. The other one they call Kenya Innovation Agency. And the other one they call National Research Fund. You see, they generate fund and they are targeting to have up to 2% of their GDP invested in R&D. And there is a direct correlation between investment or expenditure and outputs in terms of production and productivity. That's why you see Kenya today, because of the high level of investment in R&D, being rated as number 2 according to the Global Innovation Index in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa. Outside South Africa, Kenya is number 2 because of this investment that has translated into lots of production and productivity, lots of innovations like the M-Pesa technology and so many other hubs that exist in Kenya. Presence of national innovation system, the essence of this is that a national innovation system helps to coordinate other ministries and prevent them from working in silos. So if you have climate change, agriculture ministry want to claim climate change because agriculture bears the greatest brunt. Environment want to say they are the parent ministry. Health, we say it affects health. Sports, we say their own. Transport, we say their own. Industry, we say their own. If they work in silos, it's going to be a problem. But when you have a national innovation system, it connects them and leads to a bigger bang in productivity. Next slide. Ratification of international laws. We have also found out that countries that have ratified most international conventions and treaties have more commitments in the implementation of eco-innovation policies. For instance, if you have ratified the Paris Agreement, which, as a matter of fact, all the countries in Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, have ratified. If you have ratified the R&D investment that African Union has said 1% of your GDP invested to R&D, you become committed. But if you are not part of such, then you feel that you are not committed to do anything in terms of sustainability, in terms of eco-innovation. Presence of national institutions, of course. We are talking about ministries, departments of agencies. Most importantly, presence of capital assets. And capital assets here refer to natural, social, human, physical, financial, and political assets. Next slide, so that we can see some examples of these assets. So natural capital, here I mean natural resources stocks from which resource flows useful for livelihood are derived, like those that have abundant water resource, abundant land, wildlife, biodiversity. Those people have more propensity, more opportunity to explore issues around eco-innovation. Those that have social capital, in terms of social networks, relationships, access to institutions within the society, draw from them to improve their livelihood. Human capital in terms of skills, knowledge, and so on and so forth. Physical capital, infrastructure, financial capital in terms of investment, R&D, public expenditure, and most importantly, political capital. Because, as I always say, politics politics is superior to science. The politicians have the final say most of the time to drive innovation. And once you have their buy-in, you are heading towards something. Next slide, please, as I round up. Conclusion. So I would conclude from our study that eco-innovation is generally a fairly new concept, but stakeholders are aware and knowledgeable of it based on its principles that match other sectoral policies. There is no existing standalone eco-innovation policy in the 6 countries studied. There is increasing recognition and goodwill on the importance of adopting new eco-friendly technologies. There are established institutional structures that can support eco-innovation development based on our study. Several factors have been documented to enable eco-innovation development based on research, policy, and practice. Next slide, please. So recommendations. We have lots of recommendations, but then I've just crystallized very few for the sake of this presentation. There is need to intensify awareness creation and advocacy in support of eco-innovation development in government policies and programs, which I said ATPS can do. Why I say this is because whereas most people consulted are aware of it, we need to speak and talk about eco-innovation as a slogan, as a concept, and get it written in, because all these other concepts that have been written in, climate change, before climate change came as a concept, we know of environmental issues, but then people promoted it and it passed. So why can't we promote eco-innovation? Because of its peculiarity in co-joining environmental sustainability with innovativeness that leads to the creation and production of new products and services that serve humankind. There is need for capacity building for policymakers, because policymakers who are the drivers, okay, maybe there could be I don't want to answer some questions, but then because policymakers are the ones that drive every transformational change that relate to public policy, it is important that we build their capacity to understand the importance of eco-innovation in terms of mainstreaming it into the policies and programs. There is need for increased investment in eco-innovation, research and development. Those countries that have invested more in R&D expenditure, like Kenya, like South Africa, like Tunisia, you find a direct correlation with output. But countries where you don't even have data, you can see it is glaring. They don't have anything to write home about. So there must be this preaching of the investment that the African Union saw in the Lagos plan to mandate all countries to invest 1% of their GDP to research and development. We must continue to hearken on that because it has a direct correlation to eco-innovation development. There's need to support eco-innovation R&D using relevant policy instruments. When we say policy instruments, we mean interventions of government intended to achieve outcomes. Sir?
Try and conclude, sir, because of time.
Yes, I'm already concluding. So policy instrument is very important when we want to promote eco-innovation because they are the ones that facilitate it. Like we talk about tax rebate, we talk about penalties for damages to environment or releasing toxic substances to the atmosphere. Such actions should be punished by the government. Next slide. Using their policy instrument. Increased political goodwill, of course, I've talked about that. Mainstream eco-innovation into curricula. This is a new dimension because we need to catch them young. We need to start this from the outset by ensuring that we support the new generation of scholars to engage in eco-innovation research, eco-innovation, understanding of the concepts and applications of eco-innovation. We need to strengthen national institutions with the capacity to implement eco-innovation programs. Next slide. Need for inclusion of all participants, of all actors, both in the research policy and practice, and liaising with international standards organizations to develop robust indicators. Because as we are going on to promote eco-innovation concept, we need to also begin now to develop what we call indicators of success. So if you look at SDG, there are about 169 indicators for measuring whether we are succeeding in SDG or not. Even the TISA, there are indicators. So, but eco-innovation being a new concept, those who are promoting it need to now step back. Just like this Global Innovation Index, it also has its own indicators. So we need to begin now to develop indicators for measuring compliance, for measuring performance, and for measuring achievement in eco-innovation development. Next slide, please.
Please.
Next slide. So future plans, we hope to continue to promote. You can see it's already done. We need to continue to promote the dissemination of eco-innovation results to stakeholders across Africa. We need to continue to seek for support and partnership with for eco-innovation awareness creation and advocacy through policy dialogue. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening. You see, it's about passion. I wish I could continue to talk about it, but then we are still available to be reached each time you have issues around eco-innovation. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for allowing me this opportunity to present to this noble audience.
Thank you very much, Doc. Much appreciated. That was very, very cool. Obviously, I can understand. Just for the audience, it's important for us to know that the African Technology Policy Studies Network, which Nicholas, Dr. Nicholas Ozor is the executive director, has performed a very comprehensive study on eco-innovation policy across Africa on the back of the project. So basically what he's just done is presented some leverage or some dimensions of the result of that report, of that study. So which is why I think it was very comprehensive. Obviously, we are short for time, so we have to make a move on. So just to kind of restructure the timetable, because we spent some time initially trying to sort out the admin, I'm going to actually compress it a bit. And instead of calling Professor S.C. Awuah, I'm going to actually call Professor Elijah Wanda to give a short talk around funding policies in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics from a Malawian point of view. And then Professor S.A. Awuah would follow it up talking about water management policies from a Ghana point of view. And after that session, we're going to have an interactive session of a series of questions and answers to interact with your audience. And so on that note, I want to invite Professor Elijah Wanda, who is a professor and holds a PhD in nanotechnology and material chemistry. He's currently the Director General of the National Council for Science and Technology in Malawi, after being head of the Department of Chemistry at the Faculty of Science and Technology of Mzuzu University. He is undertaking research in a range of areas with a wealth of experience and technical expertise, managing operational planning, organizational structures, and that he obtained from Mzuzu University, a multi-award winner by right, and also an amazing researcher. I want to invite Professor Elijah to speak about the STEM policy as it impacts funding from a Malawi point of view. Over to you, Prof.
Thanks so much. I shared my slides. I hope members are able to see them.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Yeah. So the title of my presentation is STEM funding policies in Malawi. the outline of presentation. I'll talk about the background information, and then I'll talk about some of the STEM funding policies in Malawi, and then challenges that affect issues of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in Malawi, and then I'll talk about the recommendations. So as a matter of background, I'll start with a quote by the former President of the United States, President Barack Obama. So the quote reads that in one of the things that I have been focused on as a president is how to create an all hands-on deck approach in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we need to make this a priority, to train an army of new teachers in these subject areas, and to make sure that all of us as a country are lifting up these subjects for the respect that they deserve. And to me, I look at this as an observation that is informed by past experience. I think during the 20th century, for example, the world witnessed science, technology, and higher education as serving as drivers for innovation in what are known as industrialized countries. And the growth of higher education and corresponding increases in the number of college graduates with expertise in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, it enabled the rapid expansion and of research and development. This was after the Second World War. And this led to strong economic performance of good jobs, but also thriving of economies that were largely driven by new technologies. The developed countries continue to rely on STEM enterprise and its quality to build knowledge-based communities and economies. Recognition of the crucial role played by STEM in creating national perspective and responsible citizen, it is essential towards dealing with the global challenges that the countries are facing. And this induces governments in advanced countries to invest increasingly in STEM education. The government recognized the fact that for nations to be successful in today's highly competitive, globalized economy, high-level competencies are critical for the creation of new knowledge. So the government of Malawi as well has also identified education sector as one of the 9 priorities, among priorities in the nation's development agenda. The government of Malawi is committed to the education sector and therefore underlined by the increase in the funding sector. And despite the high proportion of the government's budget allocation to education, the demands of expansion and quality education leaves the sector seriously underfunded. However, the cooperating partners have increased their support to the education sector significantly through what is known as the education sector-wide approach. And the government has also sought and encouraged partnership with the education providers, who includes the NGOs, but also religious organizations. With respect to policies, the government realizes that education is a key factor in poverty reduction and attainment of poverty alleviation strategy. And it is for this reason that the government formulated the National Education Policy in 2016. But in addition to that, we also have the National Education Sector Improvement Plan covering the years 2020 to 2030, which has built on lessons learned from the review of the National Education Sector Plan, which ended in 2017. So this focused on progress made, achievements, challenges, and recommendations for future programming. And the National Education Sector Plan is also informed by emerging issues. So we have the National Education Policy of 2016, but in addition to that, you have got the Malawi Growth Development Strategy 3, and then we also have the National Education Act number 21 of 2013, and Sustainable Development Goals, particularly the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. In addition to that, we also go beyond Malawi, like, for example, the African Union Agenda 2063, and then the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, and other international, regional, and sectoral policies, as it were. So with respect to financing models that exist at the moment, there are many, but I think the major ones include where you have the cooperating partners or maybe the development partners funding STEM through the Malawi government, maybe to NGOs and then to institutions, which could be schools, colleges, and universities. But we also have another model where the development partner just funds directly to NGOs, and then the NGOs funds beneficiaries in schools, colleges, and universities. But we also have a situation where development partner maybe funds NGOs, and then the NGOs fund the private sector to promote issues of STEM. We also have another model where the government directly funds communities, but also have private sector participation as well. But sometimes we also have maybe private sector, like banks, maybe funding another private sector institution. This could be an NGO working towards promotion of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So in terms of key stakeholders, in this case, we have the development partners, and then we have the government. We also have the international donors, but also we have the multiple funding partners, as it were. But then I have to mention that possibly at lower level, let's say primary and secondary, the large fund or might be financier is the Malawi government. But if we go to a higher level, like tertiary education, most of the work that is done in STEM, for example, in research, funding postgraduate students, and so on and so forth, is largely. With respect to challenges, I outlined some of the policies that we use as a country. But the problem is that we also need sectoral policies to support issues of STEM in Malawi. For example, we have the Science and Technology Policy, and this dates back in 2002, and this is a challenge. And then we also have the Science and Technology Act, number 16 of 2003, which led to the establishment of the National Commission for Science and Technology in 2010. And this one is the apex. It is at the apex of research and science, technology, innovation ecosystem. Now, it's an important document with respect to governance, but the document is also too outdated. So despite the fact that we have the national education policy, these supporting policies are too outdated to advance issues of STEM at national level. And then secondly, we also have limited data that is collected at national level to inform the science and technology policy. Although Malawi devotes about 1% of its GDP to research and development, but realization has often been difficult. The Science and Technology Act, for example, it calls for advancement of science and technology through creation of the Science and Technology Fund, but this one has not been realized. So these are some of the challenges that impede smooth of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics at national level. And then key institutions such as universities and research centers, which are mandated to support and advance STEM, are faced with a number of challenges. One of them is that there is an issue of infrastructure, that there's low investment in infrastructure, but also low investment in equipment as well to promote STEM. Of course, we have a number of development partners, like maybe the African Development Bank and World Bank, which have significantly contributed to issues of infrastructure in universities and research centers. But the intensity of research and development, except for health research, remains low, that of maybe low funding. But we also have low levels of academic staff in universities with the high level of qualifications, like maybe PhDs, for example. And although several universities and colleges offer degrees in STEM, but as a country, we don't have like many universities that are specifically focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this is a challenge as well. The other challenge is that we, as a country, we rank so low on the science and technology indicators at global level. For example, the level of funding is low, and then cap and spending on research and development is also low. Tertiary education enrollment is low, and then internet access in schools is also low. So these are some of the challenges that also impede promotion of STEM in the country. Of course, as a country, we are trying. For example, the National Commission for Science and Technology is involved in so many corporate projects aimed at promoting the private-public partnership at country level. But the challenge is that most of the support is donor-driven. And sometimes it becomes very difficult for this to significantly contribute towards the national development and priorities. So some of the recommendations that I'm putting across with respect to policy, we recommend that possibly there should be a review of this science, technology, and innovation related policies so that we promote issues of STEM at the national level. Maybe we also facilitate national STEM data gap analysis so that we generate data that could be used for monitoring and evaluation of our current policy framework for informed decision making. And then there is need for investment in STEM as well. So we need to continue and enhance investment in STEM for infrastructure, equipment, and research projects, utilizing both public and private sector investments. And also there is need for us to operationalize the Science and Technology Fund as outlined in the Science and Technology Act. But we also need to continue engaging the external stakeholders like the development partners as well. And maybe develop approaches that would promote business expenditure on research and development and innovation. And then with respect to national science STEM performance, possibly there's need for us to increase STEM-led research and to build the capacity through increased number of PhD holders, especially among academics at university, who can significantly contribute towards the improvement in STEM. And then we also need possibly to promote such establishment of more locally driven postgraduate research programs in Malawi, especially at university level, focusing on maybe masters, but largely on doctoral research programs, as it were. And then with respect to STEM education, we need to promote this through education system, starting from primary, secondary, up to tertiary levels. And then we also need to develop a gender responsive curriculum as well, so that we develop appropriate skills in STEM at our institutions of learning. And then we also need possibly to link innovation to entrepreneurship. Well, this one as well, it has got the vision to transform the country and move it to a country that is self-sustaining and self-reliant. So we need to promote the development of technology and innovation, possibly through innovation hubs, maybe centers of excellence, science parks, and so on and so forth. And then possibly there's need for funding to promote social entrepreneurship, and then promote mechanisms that enable interaction between academia, industry, civil society, and finance. Yeah, thanks so much for your listening. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think that was very, very enlightening to kind of get a sense of funding regimes in Malawi as a country. And I would imagine that different countries would have different regimes, but some things are very, very peculiar and kind of similar across board. Is the fact that many things cannot happen from a point of research except there is adequate funding to push things through. I know for a fact that the African Union actually mandated or almost requested different national governments in Africa to contribute up to 1% of their GDPs towards promoting science, technology, and innovation. As at this year, as a matter of fact, very few countries in Africa have even come close to that recommendation. And ultimately, you cannot do anything impactful, transformational, without some clear, if you like, allocation of budget to do specific things as far as research is concerned in Africa. I mean, you find many researchers in university environments who just do research just off the cuff, as long as they can gather data. You say, but ultimately, how are they able to resource mobilize to be able to do what they need to do? Now, I think it's probably a good timing for us to interact with the audience through a series of questions. So the first speaker, Nicholas Ozor, spoke about eco-innovation as a concept in Africa and alludes to the things, agendas around green economy, bioeconomy, circular economy, and all of that. You see, but the point is, let's narrow it down a little bit and get folks to engage. And the second speaker spoke about funding regimes. And so if I would request the admin folk, Alan, could you put up the series of questions beginning with the one for Nicholas, please? So everybody listening to me, if you look at the chat section, you would see a link. Okay. Alan?
Yeah, I've just put it in the chat section.
Everybody look at the chat section. You should see a link there.
There's two links I can. So there's one question 1 and 2, and then another one for question 3. So this is for Nicholas.
Good. So the first link is a very simple question, really. Is what one word or phrase can be used, in your opinion, to describe eco-innovation? So Nicholas spoke extensively about eco-innovation. In your mind, based on your subject matter of expertise, in your opinion, in your perspective, what one word or phrase? So we're going to be having the live view of what is happening in the group, okay? So what one word or phrase can be used to describe, in your opinion, the term eco-innovation? So let's see what you're thinking. Please look at the chat section and try and click on the first link, and let's see what people think about this, okay? So what's coming through? Sustainability, somebody's saying sustainable, that makes sense. Any other interesting words or phrase come to mind when you think about eco-innovation? Oh, I like that. Reform, that's very, very cool. Reformation, there seems to be a lot of sustainability. I like recycling. So recycling is another very powerful word that comes to mind. Creativity and sustainability, I like that very much, that's really good. Any other words or phrase? Hey, please, could you kind of contribute to it? Yes, so there's innovate, I like that. So we're building like a word map to describe the term eco-innovation. And this is very important because eco-innovation is quite a holistic word, and people view it from different perspectives, depending on their subject matter of expertise or their own societal changes or requirements or challenges. And then ultimately, as long as it's towards sustainable development, the word still fits. So there's, which other words are coming through? Revamping, I like that. Somebody is saying revamping, somebody is saying transform, there is reform, there's lots of form, there's development, I like that. Okay, I think we can move to the next question. That's very cool. So these are a range of words, in your view, to describe the term eco-innovation. Now the second question is a bit more tricky, but not tricky in that sense. And the question is this: because eco-innovation covers a whole range of areas. Now the question is this: if eco-innovation policy is developed in your country, which parent ministry is best suited to implement it out of the following ministries? So there's a range of ministries there. Okay, which ministries do you think is best to implement eco-innovation in your country if it was to host the agenda and to implement the policy? The agriculture, energy, science, technology, and innovation, education, or water? What do people think? So STI is leading. That's interesting to see. That's very interesting. So it seems like education is coming through as well strongly, which I find quite interesting. And I wonder who in the room has chosen education, and why have you chosen education? It would be nice for you to explain to us why. So we have STI at 9, as we can see on the group. Now moving to 10, there is nobody referring to agriculture, energy, or water at all. Okay. So I mean, for me, in some sense, I can appreciate why STI, science, technology, and innovation, would be the preferred ministry to host and implement. But I'm interested to know why the individual has chosen education. Is anybody listening to me who chose education? Could you quickly explain to us why, please? Anybody? Hello, can you hear me? Any of the folks who chose education, could you explain quickly to us why you chose education? To be nice. Yes,
I chose education.
Please tell us, mate, why. Go on.
Yes, I wish I could have chosen science, technology, and innovation.
Okay.
But in Kenya, science, technology, and innovation is under the Ministry of Education.
Oh,
but I wish we could have a standalone Ministry of STI, which we don't have.
Okay, I see. Okay, that makes sense. So in Kenya, STI is actually under the Ministry of Education. Okay, I see your point. I mean, thinking about it carefully, everyone knows universities and research organizations are absolutely crucial in development of innovation, especially eco-innovation. So from that perspective, I can also see why potentially this could fit. Now, but I guess the point is this. It doesn't really matter where you situate an eco-innovation policy, in my view. As long as the parent ministry is able to implement the policy that impacts on the sector or subject matter of reference, then ultimately it makes sense. So I guess we can move to the next question. And the next question is a third one. So click on the third link, and the question is this. Who among the following actors are best suited to drive eco-innovation policy development in your country? Is it government, private sector? Now, this is very, very almost controversial, but it will be nice for us to see what people are thinking. So who among the following actors is the best suited to drive eco-innovation policy in your country? Is it government, private sector, civil society, researchers, or public-private partnership? What are people thinking? Oh, wow. So government is tying with PPP. This is exciting. So somebody has chosen civil societies. Can you keep voting, please? Because allow us to get a sense as to how you view the implementation leverage for eco-innovation policy in your country. And why is there a tie between government and government in partnership with the private sector, which happens to have taken over at the moment? Can we keep voting, please? Now it's a tie. It's exciting. Now, I mean, for me, I can see the reason why government is best suited to drive it. But I want to find out if there is anybody listening to me, why have you chosen public-private partnership as the best actor to drive eco-innovation policy development? Anybody who chose that quickly, can you just explain to us why you chose that, please? Anybody? Why have you chosen PPP as the best suited actor to drive it? Anybody?
Dr. Can I comment?
Yes, Prof, please proceed.
You see, to run a PPP project and to drive eco-innovation, you need collaboration and partnership.
Okay.
And what PPP has done is to merge 1 and 2, that is government and private sector engagement. Okay. And when you talk about industry, academia, government, that PPP combines and holds it firmly. That's my contribution.
That is fantastic. So basically what you're saying is the PPP model, the partnership, is just basically combine government and the private sector in terms of driving the implementation of eco-innovation policy. And I think for me, if you ask me, and there must be a reason why. So for those who chose just government, can you explain why you chosen government, please? Because I mean, they're probably the two strongest actors chosen at the moment, even though I know government is subsumed within the PPP partnership arrangement. So anybody who chose government, can you explain why you chose government, please? Anybody? Anybody? Why have you chosen government in the mix? Well, to be fair, government are the custodians and the hosts of the policy. So in some sense, they've got very strong influence on policy development and implementation. And ultimately, whether you're a civil society, you're a university, you're a private company or industry, ultimately you report to the government of the country. You have to pay tax, you have to register your corporation or institution with the government. So I guess we can move now to the funding dimension of the presentation from Professor Elijah Wanda. Now, the first question is this, okay? So can we move to the funding question?
Yes.
Okay. So for the funding question under Professor Elijah Wanda's presentation, I want to ask a quick question, just for us to get a sense of some interaction before we move to the last two speakers for the day. And the question is this: who is the most important party, okay, to fund research in Africa? And there are four options. In your view, your opinion, your perspective, in your country, who is the most important party or actor to fund research in Africa? Is it industry, government, international donors, or multiple funding partners? Oh, wow. So we seem to be having a tie as well. Okay, can we keep voting, please? Someone is saying industry. Okay, so in any case, all this data will be analyzed later and sent to everybody, so you have access to it. So please keep voting. Keep voting. You have like 10 seconds to finish the vote, just to give us a feel as to what people are thinking. So very few people seems to be listing international donors, and I find that very interesting. And also few people seem to be listing industry. But then the reason I would imagine is because all those are subsumed under multiple funding partners. And why is this important? Many researchers in Africa depend a lot on government for what they do, because especially in public research environments where there's a full dependency on the government for all funding needs. It's high time individuals understand that except you operate a multiple funding portfolio, you might struggle, because continually and consistently the government is struggling to fund research in Africa, even though in some sense they are supposed to. And so since you can't depend on government from that perspective, it makes sense for institutions and individuals to keep considering multiple funding regimes or funding scenarios in order to do what they have to do. So I guess in some sense, it's a justification and a clarification of why it's important we have multiple funding partners, just to allude to what Professor Elijah Wanda had presented in his talk. Thanks everybody for contribution and engaging with this short interaction on the Mentimeter question list. Now I want to move quickly to the next speaker, who will now take us through water management policies in Ghana from a Ghana perspective. And just a quick overview of who she is. She's Professor Essie Awuah. Essie's got a bachelor's degree in biological sciences from KNUST in Ghana, PhD in wastewater management and treatment from Wamue-Ngare University, UNESCO, Netherlands. She's a multi-award winner with awards including the Best EU Research Project in Water, Environment and Sanitation, Ghana Breast Award for Women in Excellence, UNESCO Madiago Best Innovation Research. I mean, Mama is loaded. So, as a matter of fact, she was also the Foundation Vice Chancellor for University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana. And right now, she's a professor of civil engineering and water management at KNUST in Ghana. Over to you, Prof.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Very,
First of all, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas on the water policy and management in Ghana. I will ask my technician to help me. I don't know where I am. So I'm sharing my screen.
Where's the first one?
I don't know where it is. Oh, please. Oh. See, because we're not here, we have to sign in again. Please, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see.
Well, I can hear you.
Fine. We can see it.
Okay.
Your slide.
We want to share the slide, but we have it now. So first of all, I thank you very much. I'll quickly go through what I wanted to say. I'm very happy to hear the previous speakers talking about science and technology policies. These were the first policies that in Ghana it was developed by Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, for us to follow as a nation. But we relaxed. And until recently, we didn't have any policy on water and sanitation. And so there was nothing really driving the sector. So my outline, I'll look at the water resources, how important it is in Ghana, and some basic statistics in our country. So first of all, if you look at the country, we have, they can see the slides. Okay, so please, can you see the slides? Hello? Can you see the slides?
Yes,
please?
we can see the slide.
Yes, we can see it.
I cannot see it. Okay, so the next slide. Please be patient with us. Okay, the next one. This is my outline. We look at the water resources. Please, can you sit by me? My nose mask. So we'll look at the water we have, the uses, and then what has been done about the policy, and then I'll give critical comments on that. So if you look at Ghana, total area, as you have seen, is 238,000.5 square kilometers. The land and the water, we have a lot of water, and our current population is 30, growth rate 2.2, with a very good GDP and a high literacy rate. If you look at our natural resources is in abundance, our environment, our problem, according to current things, are agriculture activities being affected by drought, of course, climate change, deforestation, overgrazing, soil erosion, poaching, water pollution, inadequate supply of potable water, and illegal mining activities. And you can see that agriculture land is 69%, that's a lot, with 20% being arable, and then forest 21%. And the area being irrigated now is 340. The quantity, we have a lot of water in this regard, which is 53.2 cubic kilometers, and about 30 to 30 kilometers being produced with a runoff of 56.6 billion. It means we have a lot of water, but the Volta River contributes 41.6% of the water we have. And so I would like us to quickly look at the lake and what it does for us. It was created in 1965. So it holds back the White Volta and Black Volta rivers with a volume of 146 cubic kilometers. And its current uses for hydroelectricity, transportation, fishing, irrigation, drinking water, and recreation. I want to say that it is the largest man-made lake in the world. So look at the water usage in Ghana now. We have domestic, which is 37%. Agriculture uses most of our water. And then the industry uses 15%. Now, all these things have been done, but we didn't have any policy. So this policy, before it was, there were guiding principles. We had our own traditional practices about sustainability of our water resources, and then some of the laws and customs of the land were considered. Another thing that was used were legal practices that pertains in other countries, and countries whose practices we are always quoting in Ghana as Malaysia, Singapore, and UK in particular, and South Korea. Now, the water policy was developed in 2007, and it was based on Ghana's poverty reduction strategy. Ghana has developed a lot of documents to address poverty, and water sustainability was one of them. and then also the MDGs at that time, and then the Africa Water Vision, which was developed by the New Partnership for Africa Development, NEPAD. Ghana has a water vision, and its core vision for 2025 is to promote an efficient and effective management system and environmental sound development of all water resources in Ghana. Now, the aim of the policy is to achieve a sustainable management of water resources. So I'll quickly look at the key focus areas: integrated water resources management, access, water and food security actually, and water for non-consumption and other uses, financing, climate, capacity building, good governance, planning and research, and then the international cooperation. So the main agencies involved in water consumption are two. These are the Ghana Water Company, and this has even changed, and then the Community Water and Sanitation Agency. You could see that the focus of our water usage is centered on domestic water usage. So the key sector institutions, there are so many of them. The Ghana Water Company Limited, which is now Urban Water, then the Community Water and Sanitation, Works and Housing, and the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, Fisheries, Water Development Authority, Ministry of Women and Children, Ministry of Health, Irrigation, Ministry of Transport, and Ministry of Energy. All these sectors borders on water. Now, we also have a Water Resources Commission, and this commission was by an Act of Parliament, 1996, and it was to mandate to regulate and manage Ghana's water resources and coordinate government policies in relation to them. You see that this was made before the policy was developed. And then the Act vested all the water resources of the people of Ghana in the president. And then it provides a forum for integration and collaboration of different interests. And it involves major stakeholders in the sector. These are the institutions for the stakeholders. The Ghana Water Company, again, organizations producing potable water, hydrological services, VRA, the Volta River Authority, Water Research Institute, and then the Irrigation Development, the Ghana Met, Environmental Protection Agency, Forestry Commission, and Minerals Commission. Now, in the document, they have finance, capacity building, in the management of the facilities they have. They're thinking about the facilities for the supply of domestic water, hygiene and sanitation education for water resources. The current challenges facing the sector, as I see it, is that the policy document has not been reviewed since its development against the 1992 Constitution, which mandates that after every 4 years, the Constitution, the policies must be reviewed. But we don't have the capacity. And it's such a short time. I was looking at how it takes about 1 year for a government to get settled. And then it has 3 years to complete its work. And then after that, there is a new government. I mean, I wish it would be taken to 5 years. And so we also do not have skilled labor. And then because of this, this lack of skilled labor, it's not the fact that we may not have them, but every government who comes wants to change and replace these skilled labor with politicians instead of competent people. For example, chief directors of water development and ministries should not be changed because they are skilled people and they must be maintained. And then a problem of foreign consultants taken up to develop strategic plans. Review of the Constitution is required to avert such practices. Now, the institution of a ministry to implement the policy is not even mentioned in the document. You see, once you develop the policy, you have to develop a strategic plan, action plan But who is on the ground? The ministry is in the ground. And then you have people there taking decisions on the ground. But this Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, who are acting directly with the community, are not even mentioned in the policy. So how do you implement the policy in the document? Now the challenges again, we had Community Water and Sanitation Agency. They were involved with water in the rural areas and in the small towns. Now their mandate has changed. It used to be mainly donor-funded projects. Now they've been told to be self-financing. And then, of course, the Ghana Water Company has been changed into urban water, looking at urban water. Now, because they don't have enough water, the water for the rural areas were mainly groundwater. And Ghana Water was using surface water. Now it's also drilling boreholes. Every home you go these days in the urban centers, everybody is now drilling a borehole. And Ghana Water is supporting all these in the urban areas. And because of this, you know, groundwater is becoming a challenge, its availability. And then the contamination of groundwater, which is being used in the small towns and rural areas, has problems with fluoride, iron, manganese. And then there is no research. Research will need budget, and we have mentioned it. I'm happy that I am currently the chairman for the Graduate Students Association. Their trust fund, I've been made the chairman. The government has given us some money for research for graduate students, and I'm praying that he will increase the fund. And then we also have surface water pollution due to urbanization and mining activities, particularly heavy metals and mercury in particular. And then there are a lot of political interferences in the management of water resources, its distribution. As during election, if election is coming, everybody would like to do something for a community, and they may want to have water. And then other things which I cannot even mention here. And then bribery and corruption is everywhere. And then key issue is the lack of strategic plan to implement the policy, and lack of action plans and resources for the implementation. We had a sanitation policy, we developed the strategic plans, but there was no money or resources for its implementation. One of the things that is bothering us really, which when the document is reviewed, have to look at, is galamsey. Galamsey is illegal mining by small-scale miners, and now we have the Chinese encouraging the local people, or the other way, to destroy the land. Look at the river, the River Pra, one of our nicest rivers. Now this is what it has become. Look at this. They are taking gold from the base of the river, and if you have this quality, what can you use this water for? It loses its. Another thing we observed was that the policy is silent on saline water bodies, and also the Water Resources Commission is also silent on it. And so it leaves mangroves out of the policies, and who to manage the mangroves. If mangroves fall under forest reserve, they are protected. Otherwise, they are left unattended. The metro, municipal, and district assemblies can manage these resources for their communities if they are involved in the management of the water resources in their communities. They can actually ensure that water is abstracted meaningfully and sustainably. It is in the Water Resources Act that you need a permit to get a borehole, but who cares? Where is the Water Resources Commission? It's in Accra. It doesn't have any office in the district assembly. And so this is a big problem for us. Now, in spite of all the challenges, we still have opportunities. And these are the capacity building initiative in the sector. Now we have highly skilled labor. And my section, my department has a whole center which is looking at what training people for water resources management and then water supply and sanitation. But they need to be employed by the government because water resources are vested in the president. All the water resources belong to the government, more or less. Also, we now have programs of environmental health practitioners who are available for the public education in hygiene and protection of water resources from contamination. You see, but all these things, there must be institutional arrangements to get these people on board to manage our water bodies sustainably. And then Ghana Beyond Aid, our president said it, that we have to use our own resources to develop. And in actual fact, we can. And it is a good objective to pursue, that we need to harness all the resources we have and move our country forward. We also have NGOs, the private sector. Private sector is also available to help deliver water to local communities. But they are also missing in the water policy. And water can be managed properly if pollution control measures are put in place and enforced. We are looking at that. The water policy is currently under review since 2007. The strategic plan for the policy, I've been told, is also now being made. But how can the strategic plan be made when the policy is under review? Where does one start from? To put the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart? Harmonization of all stakeholders need to be pursued by clearly defining the roles of each stakeholder with regards to the management of water resources. A proper institutional arrangement is required to facilitate the delivery of water to all stakeholders. This can easily be done by the local experts, but invariably you see them bringing foreign consultants. The water policies review is needed as a matter of urgency, and all the issues raised in this presentation need to be recognized and implemented to ensure sustainable water resources availability for the country. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is fantastic, Prof. That's a very, very powerful overview of the challenges, but the opportunities as well, of water management policies in Ghana. And I would imagine the scenario is similar in many other African countries, obviously with some certain peculiarities depending on the regions. But I guess it's opening us up to the impact of policy advocacy, the impact of policy implementation on development on the ground. And as a matter of fact, it's also a really powerful way to assure sustainability and legacy of projects or development, especially in community environments. Thank you so much, Prof, for that incredible presentation. And I want to just call on our last speaker for the day. I know we have spent a lot of time because we obviously began a little later due to the admin issues, but I want to call on our last speaker who would speak on a topic I find absolutely important, like literally non-negotiable as far as Africa is concerned. I'm referring to gender policy in reference to STEM development on the continent. And no other better person to deal with this topic than an incredible professor at the Department of Gender and Development Studies, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Kenyatta University in Kenya. She's a renowned consultant in gender and disciplines around the field of social sciences. She's done a lot of consultancies and trainings in gender mainstreaming and awareness. She's a distinguished researcher and a multi-award winner with grants from bodies like the Council for Development of Social Science Research in Africa, the National Council for Science and Technology, and Lake Victoria Basin Research Initiative, amongst others. Absolute pleasure it is to welcome Professor Grace Ngare to give us a talk about gender policies important on STEM development in Africa. Over to you, Prof. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hold on. I think I need to share a screen. So
yes,
the
so,
one
Alan, could you please showcase our presentation? Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Essie, please can you unshare your screen? We can still see your screen, and I can't share the screen while you've got it.
Could you unshare your presentation so we can get Professor Grace's one on? Thank you.
No, unshare.
Unshare. Or stop sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Thank you, Essie.
That's it. That's it.
Thank you.
Should I monitor it or you're going to do it?
Yes, Alan will do it. It's okay.
Yeah, just let me know when you want me to change the slide. So I'm just going to bring it up now. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So as the slides are shared, honestly, maybe I want to start by saying, start with the first one, the importance of gender policy. And I think I want to start by saying, forget about the outline. I don't think we have time for that. And go to the slide like, why do we need a gender policy and what are people saying about a gender policy? I started with one famous Secretary General of the United Nations who says that the meaningful inclusion of women in decision-making increases effectiveness and productivity, brings new perspectives and solutions to the table, unlocks greater resources and strengthens efforts across all the three pillars of our work. That's the work of the United Nations. And gender parity at the United Nations is an urgent need and a personal priority. That is true. The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. It is a moral duty and an operational necessity. I've started with such a quotation from Guterres because I have listened to all the four speakers on the fantastic work about policies and all that. And there is one sad thing that, and today I'll be speaking to the scientists. So allow me to be a bit biased or very forceful on some of the things that scientists do because STEM literally falls under science. The World Bank itself says, next slide, no country, community, or economy can achieve its potential or meet the challenges of the 21st century, including that African EU, any other policy in the country without the full and equal participation of women and men, boys and girls. Remember who the World Bank is, and once the World Bank says that, what exactly do they mean by that? That all these policies that we are talking about, including the Ghana policy or any other, but I want to concentrate on STEM. So the question we have is, just put the slides as I talk. What is a gender policy? And this is an integral part of all organizational programs and policies that involve building a culture that understands the issues and policies which, I'm underlining from there, which respect diversity and gender-related concerns. It is not a mere statement of policy. I have heard we have so many policies and objectives, a mere statement of policy and objectives, which most of our governments, most of our countries have. In fact, in our country alone, there is the gender policy is fantastic. And it doesn't even take years to review. We have already a current document 2019. But that alone does not guarantee or ensure the concerns relating to addressing gender. And so we need to know, is it policies that we are looking for, or is it what policies are capable of doing, or how are they being implemented? So the next thing we ask is, next slide, do we need a gender policy? Do we really need a gender policy? And I was thinking, yes, we do need a gender policy. Why? What's a policy? I looked at policy like a framework, which gives the legal dimension. It helps us to do an M&E, monitoring and evaluation. It also helps us to do AA is affirmative action where there are gaps. So it provides a legitimate point of reference that is now the legal framework for addressing gender inequalities. And there are so many gender inequalities in STEM. And I didn't want to belabor you on that because you actually have the data, better data than I do, about all the inequalities in STEM subjects. And I think one of the speakers spoke about that. I think the second speaker, the inequalities within the primary schools, the inequality in higher education, in secondary, even in career development, there are so many existing inequalities in STEM. At the same time, unfortunately, there are so many policies that also address STEM. So where is the discrepancy between the two? How do we have policies and at the same time we are not seeing results? And if we are seeing results, why are we seeing them at a very slow pace? Next slide. Why do we need a gender policy in STEM? In Africa, because I'm addressing the whole Africa, large efforts have been made over the past decades to narrow the gender gap in STEM. This is what I'm saying. And there are major inequalities may still persist in many countries. We have just heard about Malawi. If we gave you the data in Kenya, much as you might think we are very, very advanced, it would also be alarming. And we have even had policies like admission, especially to the universities for girls with 1 lower grade in science. In some institutions like Kenyatta University, where I come from, there is even a further affirmative action for increasement of admission of girls with even a slightly lower point, as long as they qualify. This is the affirmative action I'm talking about. But unfortunately, in terms of enrollment, even if there is massive drives to enroll, retention, completion, research, careers, employment, leadership, there are still inequalities. So, and women are yet to reap the benefits of STEM currently enjoyed by men. So, and that is why we really need not just a gender policy to support STEM, but we also need a policy that is working. Next slide. So what are some of the challenges? I was looking at what challenges exist, not in having a gender policy, but actually seeing policies exist. And some of the things that I looked at is the formulation of policies and the implementation of policies. When you look at the formulation, within the formulation, the important facets are the process itself and the actors. And I have put this in lack of who formulates the STEM policy. And for us researchers, honestly, I think it's high time we start asking ourselves this question, because all we do is generate data, and we are very, very good at data generation. And this is why I never included any data in my presentation. If I ask any person from their countries, tell me how many girls or how many women are in this a particular place, I'll be given data and very authentic data. But what happens thereafter? What are the existing ecosystems, and are they really utilized? We as researchers, do we really look critically at, after we generate information, after we spend so much money in accumulating data, what really happens thereafter? Who do we work with and all that? And lack of consideration of aims, concerns, situations, and abilities of either men or women when poor evidence data show the link between gender, STEM, and development. I know we are doing a lot of research, but have we reached a point whereby we now focus our research to show or to indicate that the lack of policy, even if there is data to show that inclusion of women and girls in STEM or attainment of gender policies in STEM is important, I think we have shown that researchers, and we no longer need to show that to our government. But have we now shown that what is it that we are lacking if we don't implement these policies? Lack of involving researchers in policy development. How many of us have actually been involved in policy development? How many of us, and when I say us, I still include myself in the researchers category. How many of us even bother to know this policy is existing? These are the inequalities. What is it that we can do as researchers across Africa? Lack of existing clear gender policies, not exhaustive and therefore hard to implement. They are gender policies. But let me tell you, because I've looked at some of them, they are not exhaustive. They just say women are marginalized, so this should be done, this should be done. But beyond there, they finally become just rhetoric. Lack of clear-cut policies that will sustain both the men and women in STEM. And this is one of the areas that we are lacking evidence on. There are policies that indicate we need inclusion. And when I talk to you about the affirmative actions that we have had, it is for enrollment, recruitment. But we have not gone beyond policies that now say, look, even if we enroll them in numbers, what is going to make them complete? Right now, if I may give you, we have there is a policy or a decree by the government that said the other day that all pregnant girls in both primary and secondary school must be readmitted in the institutions of where they were for learning. And it went on, the government said, if we find any girl out of school, because education in Kenya is compulsory up to secondary level, actually, in primary school it's even free. If we find any girl not in school, we are going to arrest the parents and we are going to prosecute them. That policy did not say, well, it's a very nice policy, all right, it will take girls to school. But remember, these are girls who have had children. Their mothers, they are breastfeeding. The policy is not telling us who is going to take care of their children. The schools are not going to admit mothers, parents who are students and their children, their babies, in those schools. So these policies are not clear. And therefore, it takes me to the level of implementation. Gender lenses have not been applied. I want to use that in reverse. The gender lenses have not been applied to STEM. And what I'm talking about currently is application of gender lenses. I want readmission of girls to school, and the policy is very clear. But on the other hand, who is going to take care of their children? Is the government capable of taking care of these babies? And what will happen is who will feed these children and all that? The assumption that a gender policy will benefit both men and women. Sorry. What's happening? Okay, sorry for the distraction. I don't know where it's coming from. Assumption, there is this assumption that a gender policy will benefit both men and women and not necessarily women. You see, there is this assumption that we have within the implementation that if there is a gender policy, it is going to benefit both men and women and not women. And we need to be very, very clear when you are putting a gender policy. Who is it directed to? Sometimes we say to link men should not be part of this process. Women should not be part of this process. But gender lenses tells us, for example, when I talk about a gender policy to readmit students, and I'm using that because currently it's a hot cake in Kenya. Some of these girls who have got pregnant, there are two men involved in most cases. The first man is the man who made the girl pregnant. And the second man could be the father or guardian of that girl. One man is providing fees, the other one has provided to make the girl pregnant. So does a gender policy look into those scenarios? And the assumption that a gender policy will be implemented and maintained. And that, I think, is the worst assumption. Next slide. That if we have a gender policy in place, definitely it is going to be implemented. And therefore, we don't have a big problem. So what are the opportunities, existing opportunities in developing and maintaining a gender Let's go to the next slide. What are the existing? Go to the other one, please, where we have a diagram. Next slide. You come to that later. When you look at all the scenarios, I looked at the opportunity. The best opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, is the engagement of an ecosystem in STEM policy development, implementation, maintenance, and all that. What do I mean? I have asked a lot of questions, and I have left this diagram without no arrows. It is deliberate, because I'm talking to people who understand ecosystems better than I. So, whom should we engage? That's the first thing we scientists need to say to us. And how should we engage them? And my thinking is we need to start changing the narrative. It's unfortunate that most of the researchers, government mostly works alone, consult the researchers very little, get us data. I know the government keeps on asking us to give them data, and we do. But the government does not go beyond there in policy engagement. The last thing we hear is this policy has been formulated, scholars have shown evidence of the existing gaps, and therefore there is this new policy. And this is not just alone in the STEM-related subject, it is all over in policy formulation and development. So what are the policy tactics that maybe we need to use? Evidence analysis, public mobilization, decision makers engagement, shaping financial mechanisms. These are part of the important aspects of policy formulation, of policy engagement, and we need to know where are we. When you are the participation of the interaction we had, I could see the questions of who is more involved. Is it the government? Is it the NGO? Is it who? And it is a high time, as we are changing the narratives, we start thinking of the ecosystems, not just in research, but also in policy development, policy engagement, and also policy implementation. Who should be asking the questions? The question that we are asking now, why is there this policy and it is not working? Do we really know the influencers? Do we incorporate the influencers? And they are very critical. Do we incorporate them even in our research? Who is listening to us? That's the question I'm asking. Who is listening to us when we talk? Because we only sometimes talk to ourselves, international webinars, boardroom, and all this, and we complain. You see, this is not working to us. And it is true, it's not because we have the evidence. But then, how do we take this to the next level and put everyone who is supposed to do something on their toes? Breaking policy boundaries, that's what I'm trying to say. Holding readers accountable, responding to governance for accountability, and most critical is relevant research that influence policy. It is no longer research for the sake of research. It is, we have to rethink research for policy improvement. And then we have to identify who are the end users. I was listening to the previous speaker about the water in Ghana. And I would imagine there could be a lot going on. But the women, for example, who are fetching this water, because it's the women who know whether the water is good or not. And you ask them and they'll tell you, they may not know the chemicals in the water, but they'll tell you whether the water is good or not. Have they been incorporated in the policy engagement? And this is the same case with STEM. And unless we change that narrative, the last slide, before we come to the other one. Next slide and the last one. Yes, the conclusion that I am making is we need to focus. This is an appeal that I'm making. We need to focus on an ecosystem engagement. That is where we are starting by changing the narrative. We need to lobby, very important for me, women's participation in development implementation for STEM in policy. If you look at the ladder of policy engagement, policy influence, data generation. The gender gap narrows as you go to the top. And I think it is important that we start robbing. And I'll use the word robbing. Who is implementing this policy? Who is formulating this policy on STEM? How long are we going to talk? Appreciate the role of gender and authentically utilize it in policy. Let me be honest with you. I don't know what is the gender composition of this webinar. I have realized in my own engagement, sometimes it's very hard to convince men that there is a need of a gender policy. It is also very hard, even when you have evidence, glaring evidence, it becomes almost impossible to convince men, look, this is a problem. And unfortunately, it is the men majority who are in the formulation, the implementation, and even the evaluation. So, are we sincere, African governments? Are we sincere, or African researchers, or African whoever? Are we sincere in what we are saying? And finally, to link it, that is this evidence, to the national, regional, and global development agendas. I have been hearing of the African Union or African Agenda for Development, AU 63. Right now, we are going to the generation gender equality or generational equality. We are this, and they are also national development. And I think I heard somebody say where the international agenda has been customized into the national government, there is evidence. So we need to change the narrative, link research to policy driven, build capacity on research policy transition. And if I may go back to the slide where I had a question, I think those are the questions that I want to leave there. Our opportunities in STEM policies. I have 3 questions. That is one, how can we leverage on existing opportunities? Because they are there. We as Africans, the opportunities are there, but we need to start utilizing them to bridge the gender gaps in developing and maintaining a STEM policy for Africa. And the first thing is, in this, like, I don't know what people are doing, even in my neighboring country, Uganda. Are they having the same problem? If I go to the data, yes, I will find data for Uganda, Tanzania. And if I want to go far, we can go all the way to West Africa, South Africa. But it is there. So there are 2 questions. Why are there several gender policies in different African countries, but less implementation? And finally, are gender considerations really important for Africa's economic policies to be sustainable? Do we really need gender? Dr. Akan, I'm done. Thank you
so much. That was very, very powerful. And I think it's a reason why we decided for you to come last, because it's a really powerful wrap-up of the fact that whether it's water policy, funding policy, eco-innovation policy, as far as Africa is concerned, except we are able to resolve the gender policy, we will still struggle. And I think all parameters shows that, data shows that ultimately, in order to impact the implementation of those other policies, there's no due consideration of a gender dimension to these policies. There's going to be a lot of struggle. I guess I want to kind of open it up. Does anybody have any questions, please? Just maybe we'll take 2 questions, and then we can wrap up the presentation for the day. Anybody has any questions? Based on Professor Awuah, who spoke on water management policies, and also Professor Grace Ngare Wamue. Has anybody got any questions? So if nobody has got if nobody has any question, I think I'd like to ask you a question, if I may. So, Alan, could you put up the water management questions quickly? I think we'll just do those 3 questions and then wrap it up. If you look at the chat section of the platform, you would see a link. I'd like you to click, and it's a very simple question, really. But just to kind of get us engaged. I know Professor Grace Wamue kind of finished her presentation with a series of questions that I think individuals should think about. Very, very powerful questions in terms of the formulation of your next research portfolio or proposal. Have those very strong considerations. But I think for now, let's finish this last set of questions and then wrap up the webinar for today, because time is well spent now. So the first question: what aspects of water management do you think is the most important for policy development and implementation? You can respond with a phrase, a word, a short comment, whatever the case is. In your view, what aspect of water management do you think is the most important for policy development and implementation? What do we have? Don't worry, we're wrapping up now, I promise. What aspects of water management do you think? Community participation, that's interesting. Water accessibility, it's water use and reuse, pollution management. Anything else comes to mind? What aspects of water management do you all think are very important for policy development? Oh, I like that, quality. Quality has got a very, very strong correlation with health and sanitation. Water quality, okay? Water use and reuse. When Prof was speaking about the water management, it felt like a very complex setting, because water affects different environments, affects different subject matters. And how would you view that? So I think that nicely takes up to the next question. And this is just, there's no right or wrong answer, but it's just to get a sense of the room. The second question, please. In your view, which is the area with the least expertise? Note that. In your view, which is the area with the least expertise in Africa around water policies? Is it water for agriculture, water for energy, or water for health? In your view, which area is the area with the least expertise? Prof spoke about the fact that even within water policies, the significance of capacity building and competence in order to develop our water resources, it's absolutely crucial. And so training of experts, getting students to graduate and actually function as water professionals is actually a very, very important thing, or else you just find that there's very little expertise in this water subject matter. So based on our answers, we can keep responding, please. So your view, which area do you think is the area with the least expertise in Africa around water policy? It seems to me that water for energy is scoring the highest, and understandably so, I would say. See, but bearing in mind the fact that Africa is in high demand, has got high demand for energy, not being met by supply, this potentially what a worthy consideration. Do government even consider energy as a subset or a sub-theme within water policy management? A very, very important question. Thanks for answering those. And then the last question for the day is along the same line, but just a different flip to it. In your view, the last question, in your view, which is the area with the most important opportunity for growth in Africa around water policies? The most important opportunity for growth in Africa around water policies. The water for agriculture, water for energy, and again, water for health. What's your view? In your view, which is the area got the greatest opportunity for growth in Africa with regards to water policies? Can we keep responding, please? This is the very last question for the day. That's interesting. Water for agriculture is coming up strongly, and water for energy. That's very interesting to see. Water for energy. So can anybody in the room just give us an idea, why have you picked water for energy as a great area of opportunity for growth? Anybody, please? Anybody who picked water for energy? Hello? Is there anybody who picked water for energy?
Hello?
Please go on. Please go on. Why have you picked water for energy in your view as the greatest opportunity for growth?
All right, this is Dr. Akboka from Benin University, Okada. I would pick water for energy because of the high energy deficit in Africa.
Okay, that's interesting. Because of deficit, energy deficit in Africa.
Yes.
Great potential for hydroelectric power.
No, people are moving away from hydroelectric power. Now they are going to sustainable energy.
I think I want to wrap up the session with a very simple question. I think just to get a view that we are all on the same plane. So can you put up the question, is gender consideration, second one under gender for Grace? Is gender consideration important for Africa's economic policies to be sustainable? It's a very simple yes or no question. And maybe we'll wrap it up with that, just to make sure we are all on the same plane. Is gender consideration important? Just a minute. That should come up shortly. I think it's a nice way to end the webinar. So if you look at the chat section, that should come up. Is gender consideration? That's it. Okay. So could you just respond to this, please? Is gender consideration important for Africa's economic policy? Based on what you've heard today, policies are continually being made, but are they being implemented? A range of policies that was dealt with today: eco-innovation policy, water policy, funding policy, and gender policy. So to wrap it up, in your view, is gender considerations important for Africa's economic policies to be sustainable, yes or no? 8 yes, no. You cannot understand how relieved I am that there is no yet. That for me is a good evidence that we are all on the same plane. We cannot be sustainable until we get our gender considerations, gender mainstreaming right. 13-0. That was the evidence I'm looking for. That everybody.
Please, I have a class, so I'm leaving. I have a class.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I think on that note, with a clear preference for yes, which means everybody's on the same plane, I want to thank you so much for taking out time to join the webinar today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I also want to apologize on behalf of the team for us starting a bit late. I think we'll promise that next time everything will be very precise. Just to end the webinar, if you look at the chat section and you want a certificate of participation delivered to your email by the RECIRCULATE project, please click on the link just put on the chat section, and just within like a minute or so, just fill in some very, very small questionnaire of your name as you would want it to appear on your certificate. And then ultimately that will be delivered to you. So if you are looking forward to receiving certificate of participation at the end of the webinar, look at the chat section. There's a very simple link. Click on it and fill your name as you want it to appear on certificate and your email address. I want to absolutely thank all our speakers today, Professor Elijah Wanda, Dr. Nicholas Ozor, Professor Ese Awuah, and Professor Grace Ngare Wamue for an incredible session. Thanks everybody for your engagement and collaboration, and looking forward to a next engagement. It's an absolute pleasure, and have a great week. God bless.